At first, it started small, just a grainy clip floating around, reposted by some tiny account barely noticed. But then it refreshed, and suddenly, everything changed. Timelines jolted awake. Commentators froze mid-sentence. News. Screens lit up with the same stunned question over and over. Like nobody could believe what they were seeing. This wasn't just some forgotten video resurfacing. The clip had one line that hit like a match on dry grass. On dry grass. And it wasn't screamed, it wasn't dramatic. It was calm, dismissive, chilling in how certain it sounded. Those words cut right through identity, belonging, and who gets to define what America stands for. Within minutes, people were repeating it in disbelief, trying to wrap their heads around how casually it was said. The shock wasn't just in what was said. It wasn't how comfortable it sounded, like it had been practiced untouched by empathy. And as the clip bounced across platforms, reactions hardened fast. Progressives who care about inclusion felt that familiar tight knot in their stomach. Immigrant families saw echoes of arguments they've spent years pushing back against. Allies who usually defended every slip-up, they went quiet. They watched, they replayed it, and they realized this one was different. You could feel the moment tipping like a crowd leaning forward, holding its breath. Then came the defensive moves. Statements drafted. Explanations floated. Context promised but never delivered. Body language shifted. Smiles faded fast. The calm certainty of the speaker, gone. Replaced by something brittle. This wasn't outrage made by headlines. It was recognition. A mask had slipped, even for a second, and millions saw what was underneath. People couldn't stop watching. Not because they loved the drama, but because they couldn't look away from what it revealed. Dashboards were refreshed obsessively, numbers climbing faster than seemed real. Group chats buzzed with disbelief, then resolve. People who hardly ever agreed, suddenly nodding at the same screen, realizing the stakes instantly. This wasn't just a misstep or careless phrasing. It was a stress test of credibility, and it was failing in public. Every share amplified the same question no official statement could answer. What does leadership look like when the record plays back unedited? For everyone at once, and as the video spread faster than anyone could control, one truth became impossible to ignore. Here's why it hit so hard. The ground was already cracked. People are exhausted by speeches about inclusion that fall apart under scrutiny, leaders who demand grace, but offer none in return. The public is sharper now, less forgiving, more aware of how power excuses itself. When the clip popped up, it didn't exist in a vacuum. It landed in a moment where people were primed to notice patterns, tired of being told to look away. For immigrant communities and their allies, it hit especially raw. Our identity has been politicized to death, yet lived experiences get brushed aside. People weren't just watching a clip, they were measuring it against years of promises, rhetoric, symbolic gestures. And the disconnect? Impossible to ignore. This wasn't outrage looking for a target, it was recognition meeting proof. What made it worse? The early attempts to minimize it. People told to wait for context, intent matters more than impact. It'll blow over. But the familiar playbook just made the frustration grow. Every effort to wave it off only amplified the arrogance people were reacting to. The more it was downplayed, the more it mattered. A clear contrast emerged. On one side, defensiveness, polished language meant to smooth discomfort without addressing it. On the other, the public asking simple questions about accountability and trust. Calm voices weren't demanding cancellation or drama. They were asking for honesty. Or clarity, or whether representation matters if it can't withstand transparency. And why the burden of understanding always falls on the people already carrying it. This is why the clip struck a nerve. It touched the tension between who America says it wants to be and how power actually behaves when unguarded. Progressives who care about dignity saw this as a test, not of ideology, but integrity. Is inclusion real, or just a shield against criticism? The social feeds reflected the shift instantly. Comment sections filled with personal stories, not slogans. Immigrants shared experiences from classrooms, offices, neighborhoods. Allies expressed disappointment, not because perfection was expected, but because accountability was. The demand wasn't punishment, it was clarity. Hours passed, and it became obvious this wasn't fading. Every attempt to redirect attention only drew more eyes. The video became a shorthand for a deeper conversation people had been avoiding. Viewers knew something bigger was happening. This wasn't about one politician, it was about whether accountability still matters in public life. People leaned in, not for drama, but for answers they rarely get. Then came recognition. Curiosity replaced shock. People dug into the past and realized the resurfaced clip fit a pattern. Old controversies, half-hearted apologies, statements brushed off. One by one, it all lined. What once seemed isolated now looked like repetition. Progressives are used to nuance. They get complexity, growth, learning. What frustrated them wasn't imperfection. It was repetition without reflection. Every time concerns were brushed aside, trust thinned. Every deferred accountability shrank the benefit of the doubt. Social media threads cataloged the past, not for drama, but from exhaustion. Clips resurfaced, headlines recalled. Commentators shifted focus from ideology to temperament. Was this someone who actually listened when challenged? Or someone who treated criticism like an attack? People had asked before and never felt answered. That familiarity made impatience grow. How many cycles before it finally broke? Contrast, sharpen. Public fluent in media literacy on one side, political figure with increasingly rehearsed responses on the other. Calm certainty curdled into dismissiveness. Confidence became detachment. The pattern was undeniable. This wasn't piling on, it was accumulation. Like water pressing against a dam, every controversy added weight. The resurfaced video just revealed the pressure. Frustration wasn't loud, it was heavy. Rhetorical questions spread. If representation matters, why does accountability feel optional? If marginalized voices are celebrated, why are they sidelined when they criticize leaders? If progress is the goal, why does defensiveness always win over self-reflection? People weren't waiting for another explanation. They wanted to see if the pattern would finally be confronted or repeated again. Memory hardens judgment when patterns repeat. Communities compared notes, realizing how often they were asked to get instead of remember. Recognition forged solidarity, not division. People felt seen. Patience was running out. The usual exits were closing. Then came a new voice, calm, measured, credible. Critics stepped forward with facts, receipts, and context, without venom. They spoke about values, not personalities. Koye. Accountability, not allegiance. Representation carries responsibility. Leadership means listening when the record contradicts the story. That calm clarity did more than outrage ever could. Clips circulated. Contrast sharpened. On one side, brittle defenses fraying. On the other, steady voices anchored in principles. Audiences leaned toward the steadiness. The energy wasn't performative. It was credible. Truth traveled farther and faster than spin ever could. Control slipped. Statements rewritten. Interviews floundering. Smiles flickering and vanishing. Screen split between calm clarity and defensive shifting. Each attempt to reset pulled more eyes in, not fewer. Headlines hardened as patience thinned. They addressed concerns. Right arrow under fire right arrow as scrambles to respond. Agitation exposed. Contrast persuaded. Then the receipts dropped, one by one. Silence did the work. Timelines aligned. Contradictions sat there, unanswered, undeniable. Panels froze. Commentators stopped interrupting. Calm dismantled defenses without spectacle. Misunderstanding became inconsistency. Contact revealed avoidance. Pressure built. Release came not as outrage but recognition. Clarity. Comments shifted from questions to conclusions. Longtime defenders paused. The internet didn't roar, it nodded. Collective recognition carried weight. Wait. Finally, accountability had a model. Calm, firm. Firm, firm, unshakable. Shows multiple. Viewers reconsidered loyalties. Permission to expect better without abandoning ideals. And when the response went public, balance shifted overnight. Control visibly slipped. The calm critic's clarity carried the day. The defensive posture collapsed in real time. The video did more than expose a misstep. It revealed character under pressure. Arrogance versus accountability. Deflection via honesty. For viewers, it was proof that integrity can't be faked. Calm clarity resonates louder than chaos. Courage often speaks softly. Timelines froze. People reflected, demanded better. This wasn't about one clip or one person. It was about principles, communities, and responsibility. Representation, respect, responsibility. They matter. They must be defended not just in speech, but in action. The call is clear. Stay informed. Question boldly. Elevate truth. What matters? Think critically. Demand dignity and leadership. In a world overflowing with noise, your attention, discernment, and courage shape the story. Be part of it.